So salary negotiation. Now, for those of you that are just sort of starting out here, perhaps a bit like Shadia, you don't have a lot of experience with this. You might be out of your comfort zone because it feels like you're going out on your own. You're not being given permission to do this. And you might also feel weird because you're not in the habit of not following the rules, shall we say. You're that type of person. And if it's any comfort, we all start out like that. We all start out like, unless you've got something wrong with your brain where you're missing a part of your brain, the part of your brain that feels shame or that feels, rebellion is slightly uncomfortable or something. Hey, it takes all kinds. There are people like that. What with the adrenaline junkies and stuff, when they tell you when you're 5, don't jump off that cliff, and 99% of people won't, and 1% of people say, no, it seems like a good idea to do this, and they do it and they enjoy it, right? But for most people, you feel weird doing it, you feel nervous doing it. Okay, let's talk about this entire topic. First of all, salary negotiation. You are allowed to make a counteroffer to anything. Okay. There are no rules that say that you are a slave to an employer, especially an employer that you don't yet work for, right? You can ask for whatever you want. Now, they also have the freedom to refuse anything they want, right? Okay? But that's the reality. There's nothing stopping you from saying, no, sorry, I don't think this is good enough for me. I will need this. Okay? You are perfectly allowed to do this. Now, here's what's going on. Anytime you take a job, especially when you leave a job to take another job, you jump from one place to another, there's always risk, okay? What if everything they've told you is a lie, okay? And you show up after having signed a job offer and they said, we're going to pay you this if you come and do this job, and you show up on day one and the place is boarded up. It was all a scam. There is no job. It's not even a real company, right? There's always that risk. Okay. There are other risks too, right? Maybe you jump into a job and it's a legitimate job, but the problem is you've got a terrible boss. Your boss is a psychopath. They changed the job duties from what you had agreed in your offer letter to something completely different that you have no interest in doing, that you don't want to do, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's always risk, is my point, okay? So even if you don't negotiate, there's always going to be risk. There's more risk if you give up a good job, okay, that you've been doing for a while. You leave that job to get a better job. You've had an offer. They're going to pay you more money, right? There's always risk there because you risk leaving a good job that pays halfway decent for a job that you thought was going to pay even better, but it's living hell and you're in a much worse situation, okay? So there's always going to be risk, okay? Even if you don't negotiate. That's the first thing everyone has to understand, okay? Now, on top of that, if you choose to negotiate, meaning that you make a counteroffer, there is additional risk, okay? The biggest risk is that they'll say no, right? So, like Shadia just said in her I assume Shadia is a her. In her story, she made a counteroffer. There's always a chance they can come back and say, no, I'm sorry. You obviously are conveying to us that you're not happy with the amount that we would want to pay for this. So it seems like your expectations are out of line with the type of candidate we want to hire. So I'm sorry, we're rescinding our offer. Okay? That is also a possibility when you choose to make a counteroffer. Okay? There's risk with everything. This is what I'm trying to stress. Now, what's the solution to risk? The solution is to have an alternative, another option, okay? So that no matter what happens with these people, if they choose to claim that they're highly offended and then they rescind their offer, they take it back and they say, okay, no job offer for you, no soup for you, right? If they choose to do that, you have something else going on. You have another alternative besides unemployment, okay? Either you're working at a job or you have another job offer from another place, or you don't have a job offer, but you got a bunch of interviews lined up with other employers, okay? Or failing that, you have a lot of other job opportunities you can apply to, okay? So you got something, you have some kind of alternative, right? The better alternatives you have, the more power you have in negotiating, the greater number of alternate options you have, the greater your power in negotiation. Because negotiation is not about persuasion. It's about like knowing what makes sense for you to do, knowing your position, and it's not a matter of persuading them to see it your way. It's about you knowing when to say no. I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense. So no, that doesn't make sense. I can't accept your offer, not for that number. I would need this. Or I can accept your offer for that number, but I'm going to need this much vacation, this many sick days, these benefits. Now, if you can do that, we got a deal. But if you can't do that, sorry, no dice. Right? It's not about you persuading them, okay? They're never going to come around and say, yes, you're absolutely right. I should pay you more, right? It takes all kinds. So sometimes if you're dealing with reasonable people, maybe they will have that reaction, and it is possible to get them to see it your way and agree that they were wrong in making the original offer. But most of the time, that's not going to happen. They're sticking to their offer, and you understand, like, look, it doesn't make sense. I got a job offer 2 days ago where they're going to pay me $30 an hour. Why would I take this for $20 an hour? Right? It doesn't make sense. So no, I'm sorry. Now, if you can scratch that out and put $30 an hour, then we can maybe reach an agreement here. But other than that, sorry, it doesn't make any sense. No dice. Okay? Now, if you don't have any other options besides unemployment, that means you don't have a lot of power negotiating. It's as simple as that. Okay? You can try and persuade them that they should pay you more, but usually that doesn't work. You know what I mean? That's not something that succeeds very often. Okay? It's like when you go to the store and you want to buy a can of baked beans. Like, I know you do. Okay? Don't think I don't know. You want to buy a can of baked beans, and you can go to two stores that both sell the can of baked beans. One is selling it for $5 a can, the other one's selling it for $8 a can. Where would you buy it from? The place that sells it for $5, right? Right? So that's what they're doing. Here's a candidate that's willing to work for $20 an hour, but here's another candidate that says, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to need $30 an hour to do this job. What would you do? Well, you'd say, okay, well, thank you very much, but I'm going to go with the candidate that will do it for $20 an hour. That's how it works, right? Now, if they're truly paying below what's reasonable, you won't be able to find a candidate that will do it for $20 an hour. Or if you do, it's not a very good candidate, where the employer is thinking, do I really want this person? I would much rather have the other candidate that asks for 30, right? In which case you will probably get it, right? But this is what negotiation is. It's based on options. It's based on knowing your options, knowing your position, okay? There's always risk that if you make a counter offer, they will say no. And in that case, if you're going to do this and you care about this option, you should expect them to call your bluff. Okay? So for that reason, I would not negotiate if you don't have any other options besides unemployment. I would get the job. Like, if it's this or nothing, I would take it. Now, if it's a crappy job, if it's not paying you very much, at least you can continue your job search while you've got some income coming in, right? Right? Or, I mean, like, it's better than nothing. I mean, if you're, usually that's the default position. If you don't have any other options, take this. And then, if nothing else, if you continue your job search and you do get an offer from a second employer, at least now you have two options. You could take the offer from the second employer, or you could just stay at your original job that you got, right? You don't have to take anything that they feel like offering, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so the takeaways are that negotiation is a totally separate thing than persuasion. A lot of people out there in the world, they think they get those confused. They think that persuasion and negotiation are the same thing. If you're a serious negotiator, okay, especially with matters like this, there's not a lot of dimensions to what we're negotiating here. There's basically price and a couple of other things like vacation days, working conditions, benefits, personal days, and perks, like you get a bigger office or a small office, or you get a company car, or, like you can list a handful of these, but it's usually a simple thing we're negotiating here. And most recruiters or hiring managers, whoever is on the other side of the table, they're basically conditioned most of the time to make an offer and stick to it. Okay? Unless they don't know what they're doing, or you are a real catch and they see you as a real catch where they're prepared to be flexible if they can get you. That being said, they still have their limits, right? Okay. So that's the nature of negotiation. One of these years, I should do a course on negotiation where we can get into all the details, the technicalities of how it works. They teach that stuff at Harvard, in Harvard Business School. There's a really great course, and there's a really great textbook that they use. It's like this thick. It's like 2,000 pages on negotiation. I've actually read it. Okay, some of the things I wanted to cover were in a job interview, when they ask you, what are your salary expectations? Because this is part of it, right? The most common thing that people will try to negotiate is salary, is compensation. Whether it's an hourly wage or it's an annual salary, they'll try and negotiate that. This is a huge topic, but it starts with the job interview question, what are your salary expectations? The bottom line is you don't want to give a number. You want to try every trick in the book to not give a number. Okay, so, the first time they ask you, you say, well, it's too early to say. I don't really know that much about my working conditions and the full nature of this job, and what it's going to involve. I would kind of need to know that before I'd be able to give you a number, right? Sometimes they accept that. A lot of times they don't. They push you more, right? The second standard thing is to say, well, this position that you're trying to fill has been approved, right? This was approved by your company or your organization. So therefore, the compensation must have been approved also, as in the range. Can I ask what it is? Right? And sometimes that works where they give you the range. They say, oh, it pays anywhere between this and this. In which case you say, that works fine for me, right? But a lot of times that doesn't work either because they know what you're doing. They're not stupid. They're playing this tap dance here. And so they say, oh, we don't know. We're recruiting for this job, but we have no clue what it pays, right? Like as if you would ever believe that, because it's asinine. But they don't give you a number, right? So they don't give you a range. So, okay, you move on to stage 3. And they really put the screws to you and say, we need a number. You must, according to the rules that we've just made up, you have to tell us a number now of what you need, right? That's what they're doing. So you say, well, listen, at this point, the only thing I can tell you is that, I would probably be okay with something between, say, here and here. Okay, I give you a low number and I give you a high number. Somewhere in there I'm sure would be fine, right? Now the two numbers you give, they're still technically reasonable, doable, but they're a stretch. So you've got like a really low number to a really high number. They're not ridiculous, but they're just like a real stretch. Okay? And say like, that's the best I can do. I mean, any further refinement of that at this stage, I'd be just pulling a number out of the air. It wouldn't make any sense. So that's the best I can do for you. Right? Okay, so like that's how you answer that question. It's sort of a 3-step answer. And the reason why you do this is because if you give them a range, and the range is pretty wide, the reason why they're asking the question is to try and eliminate you, right? They want to see if you're going to ask for too much money. You're going to price yourself out of the running. And so if you give a range that starts pretty low, they can't do that. They can't say, well, this person wanted too much money, because you've said, well, somewhere in this range, and it starts with a low number, right? So you pass that elimination test. Okay, they can't eliminate you, but you haven't pegged yourself to a low number, so it allows you to ask for more money later on. If you do get to the final stages of this, and they make you an offer, right, and say you ask for more money, then you're not going back on anything. You said like, hey, somewhere between here and here, and I'm asking for nearly this high number. So, I mean, hey, I told you at the beginning, I'm not going back on any word here. Right? So that's why you phrase it that way. Okay? Another common question they may ask you in a job interview that's part of this is they say, what is your current salary? Or what is the last salary you made if you're between jobs right now? Right? And the reason they're asking that is because they have no idea what you're worth. And what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to peg your value to the last salary you were paid, right? The theory being that if they paid you that much money and you stayed working there, you're obviously content with that amount of money, right? So, a reasonable amount of money that they could maybe get you for would be somewhere in the range, somewhere in the area of what you were paid last time, right? It has no bearing on anything. It has no real assessment of your value. It's just, these other people paid you that much and you were okay with it. So that's how much we're going to pay you. It's like your last job could have been a job before you got your college degree, your university degree or something, doing a student summer job, painting houses. Now you've come out of there with you're a fully qualified medical doctor. You're obviously not going to be happy with the same amount of money. Like, it's so stupid, right? But that's why they ask you that, right? So if they ask you, what is your current salary, or what is your last salary, or anything like that, the response to that is, well, I have a personal policy of not disclosing that. There are privacy issues or confidentiality issues. I'm sure you understand. I don't disclose that. So no dice. I'm not falling for that, right? So we're talking about salary negotiation, right? We're kind of in the middle of that. We covered how there's always risk in taking any job. Additionally, there's always risk when you try and negotiate in any way, shape, or form, like you make a counter offer of some kind. There's additional risk. Okay. The solution to risk is to have alternate options. Okay. If your only two options are you take this job or you're unemployed, and those are the only two options you feel you have, you probably wouldn't want to negotiate, because all that does is it increases the risk that you run that this is not going to work out, right? They may rescind the offer. They may say, sorry, too rich for my blood, and they withdraw the offer. Okay, so we covered all that stuff. Negotiation is not persuasion. That's the other thing we covered. A lot of people confuse it and think it is. It's not. If you've done things correctly, you've gotten a couple of different job offers, you've been working really hard to pursue all kinds of leads and opportunities, and you've got a couple of job offers, right? Then you can go down to talk to the employer for one of the offers and say, no, I'm sorry, like I'd love to take this job. I'm flattered and all that, but I'm going to need this much money, and I'm going to need these benefits, and I'm going to need this number of sick days a year. So if you can do that, great. I would love to work for you. Other than that, I'm sorry. It's a no. So let me know. And, I'll give you 48 hours, right? Like, you can actually do this. And you know what I mean? Because you have an alternative, right? Like, if they've already offered you $50 an hour and these people are offering 40, you can be confident and say, like, sorry, I need 50. And you can stick to that. And there's no risk to you, really, because you've got an alternative. That's how this works. So the way to negotiate successfully is nothing to do with persuading these people. It's going out and getting alternatives, right? How do you argue someone that you're worth more money than they're willing to offer when no one is offering you the amount of money you think you're worth? How do you come to the conclusion that you're worth that much? I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying, prove it. Because I don't take your word for it. Prove it. Now, the proof would be to say, oh, well, these people have just sent me an offer where they're going to pay me $80 an hour. So clearly I'm worth $80 an hour. Don't tell me I'm not, because I got people here lined up willing to pay me. It's pretty hard to argue with that, right? But if you have no alternative where someone is going to pay you that, it's very hard to prove you're worth that much, right? And who cares what other people think? This is just the reality. Like, how can you maintain I'm worth 80 when you've never worked for 80? No one's willing to offer you 80. Like, it's just a hard thing to persuade anyone, right? Or persuade yourself. So this may sound negative, but it's really not. It's like, go out and get some options. Don't waste your time trying to persuade these clowns. Go do the work. Earn that offer, go do the work, pursue all these opportunities, investigate different ways of getting jobs, and then you'll be able to clean up. This is how this stuff works if you want to negotiate. Okay. This is, I got 44 people here. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you're getting something out of this. This is a long topic. Let me continue, okay? Now, maybe some of you are wondering what's going on the other side of the table, okay? You may understand your position, but you don't really understand, like, they're a black box, okay? You don't know if they have leverage, if they have room, not leverage, sorry, if they have leeway to negotiate, if there's any forgiveness there. Let me explain how this usually works. There's three basic ways of valuing an employee, okay? Now, no one knows and no one can prove scientifically how much someone is worth. They just can't. It's all based on theories, and the theories are pretty shaky, okay? All they know is that a group of 10 people working together, they earn the company this much money a year. That's how much profit they bring in. So all you can say is these 10 people working as a group are worth X, because that's how much they bring in. Anything else is like a really twisted argument that is very shaky. Okay? So the three theories are pay for knowledge, market price, and a point system, okay, based on value. So pay for knowledge is the easiest one to understand. That's where this is used the least. It's where they pay you for the amount of experience you have, the amount of abilities you have, the skills, and the education you have. So if you had a PhD and you had invented cold fusion, okay, and say you got a job as a janitor, because this totally happens, working as a janitor, they would pay you like $1 million a year. Okay? Because even though you sweep the floors and the market price for that is maybe minimum wage, right? You have a PhD and you invented nuclear fusion. So if you're in the office with, the rest of the employees, maybe there's a chance they could ask you a question or whatever. That knowledge might be useful. So pay for knowledge, it's where it has nothing to do with job duties. It has everything to do with what you have, whether you're using that in this role or not. Okay. The only place where we really see that is in like R&D type situations where, there's a bit of a think tank, you employ scientists, and, it's not based on like what they're doing. It's based on their accomplishments and their education and their experience. So that's how you pay them. Okay. So that's one way of valuing people. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what role you're in. What do you have, right? Okay, that's the first way. That's not used very often. Second way, much more common, is market price. Market price does not mean what you're worth. It simply means in this geographic location for this role, on average, companies pay this amount, right? Now remember, once again, it has absolutely no bearing on your value because some companies intentionally pay above market price, so they get, in theory, the better employees in every position. Other companies intentionally pay below market price. It's called paying below market, where they feel they've done some calculations and they feel that even though the better employees will probably leave, we're saving so much in labor costs by paying people below the market price that we still make money. Okay. And the jobs aren't very demanding where we need the absolute best people in every position. So we can get away with the not so great people and still come out on top. Other companies, like I've talked about before, it's a crappy place to work. And in order to get people to stay there, you have to pay them a premium. So even though they're paying above the market price, it's a terrible job. People hate it. And you get a very high employee turnover. Okay. So there's all kinds of reasons why people pay what they do. And just going by the average, that has nothing to do with your value. Besides, you could be an above average person. Like you are above average in terms of productivity. Or other measures of, your worth. Or you could be below average, right? The other thing is that, for most jobs, you can't get accurate market price information. You can't. What little you can get is inaccurate. How much would you pay someone in Boise, Idaho, who could repair a 1965 steam engine or boilers or boiler oil-based or coal-fired heating system for a building? What's the market price for someone with those skills? Well, you can't find that information because in Boise, Idaho, there might be maybe 5 people that can do that. And I'm being generous here, right? So there's not enough people in this data set for you to take an average. And even if there was, there's not enough people for you to know what they're paid to get that information. So how do you find the market price? Well, you can't, right? The only way to do it would be to probe the market and say, I offer you this much. And the person says, screw you. And you go, okay, that's too low. So I'll offer you this much, and they say, screw you. Okay, you have to go high, right? So market price is not a good way of doing this either. Okay. The third and final way of doing this is for each organization to come up with their own sort of matrix, their own list of like different things that you could have and assign points to how valuable they think it is, right? Some places you get a PhD, they think you're a god. Other places you got a PhD, they don't even know what that means. They don't value it. They don't pay you anymore, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Like a PhD doesn't have an absolute value. It can be worth a lot to one employer, but it can be worthless to another employer. They don't value it, right? What about having sales experience? In one organization, they think that's really useful and valuable. And another organization, they don't give a crap about that. Like government, I have 20 years sales experience, They say, so what's that? Why do you think that's important? And then no matter what you say, you can't make an impression on these people because they just don't value it, right? So that's like a point system. So what they do is they look at what you have, what you happen to have, each year of experience, each skill, each education, and they add up the points, and then they translate points into money or into compensation based on a multiple that they use at that company, whether they pay above market or below market, this kind of thing, right? So that's how they value you. And this explains why you go to one employer, they'll pay you more. You go to another employer, they'll pay you less. You haven't changed. It's still the same role, but they see your value differently, right? So a lot of big companies like large enterprise, they actually do this as part of what they do in the HR department. They assign all these points, and then they can determine, like, okay, so for each pay grade, like it should be this range, right? Right. So that's what's going on the other side of the table, right? So that's why you go to one company, they'll pay you more. They go to another company, they'll pay you less. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. They're using different combinations of these three basic methods, right? Okay. Let's see. In the chat, we got David says, can we use our previous compensation as a leverage to ask for more money? I mean, in cases that you got enough compensation and you want more in the new position. Listen, everything happens some of the time. So I'm sure you could maybe argue this, and sometimes it might actually work, but generally no. You see, let's say you needed to hire someone to help you move your stuff to a new apartment or whatever, and you feel it should, you're paying minimum wage, but then somebody shows up and says, hey, well, okay, it pays minimum wage. Well, the last place I worked, they were paying me $40 an hour. So can you maybe pay me like $40 an hour? How would you feel about that? Do you think that makes sense? Like would that persuade you? I would guess most people would say no, because first of all, you don't know if they're lying. You have no way to verify it. And even if that were true, do you care what somebody else paid this person? If you feel that moving boxes that pays minimum wage, like if that's what you feel, is this going to sway you to pay them $40 an hour, right? I'll leave that with you, okay? Generally, this doesn't work. Some of the time it might, but generally it doesn't. Nicholas Quinn says, I just wanted to quickly say thank you for all your tips. Managed to get a job in tough economic conditions, and I'm 100% sure that you helped me. Thank you for the passion for helping all. Well, that's great to hear, Nicholas. Congratulations. And you deserve every bit of that. I'm glad to see that you're prospering, and never stop learning, never stop improving yourself. And, always be looking, in one way or another. Either you're doing an active job search, campaign, or you're just you got your ear to the ground, just seeing what's up, right? Never stop looking. Always be ready to pursue an opportunity if something comes along. Okay, that's all I'll say. And you will do really well. Thank you. Okay, continuing. So we talked about the three methods of valuing an employee. Okay, the point system is basically arbitrary. They assign values to different things you could have entirely based on their own opinions. The opinions of the people that, are doing this. And usually that's recruiters, hiring managers, and the executive management of the company, right? They just, they happen to believe that education is a really, really useful thing in all its forms, or they happen to believe that education is absolutely useless in all its forms and they don't assign much value to it, right? Or they feel the same way about experience or skills or training or, various types of training, right? Totally arbitrary. Okay. So that's what's going on. And the end result is that usually most positions have a range, right? There's the minimum and then the maximum for any particular job, right? The reason there's a maximum, number one, is because of what they can afford. But number two, it's because generally you can't have a subordinate making more money than their boss, right? If the boss has greater responsibility, and that means that their job is on the line and they're responsible for the work of their subordinates, they take the credit, but they also take the fall. depending on what the performance is. It doesn't make sense to pay those people less than their subordinates who have less responsibility, right? So usually that sets the upper limit. If we were to pay you more than this, you'd be making more than your boss. So sorry, no, we can't do that, right? That's not fair. Your boss would be thinking, what the hell am I doing? Like, I got to do all this extra work and I got to take responsibility for this. This person's making more than me, right? No way. Either I leave or I want to be demoted to doing their job, right? I get to make more money and I get to do less work and have less hours. So yeah. Okay, so that's the upper limit. Lower limit is usually if there's people under you or there's other things, factors like market price and things like this. Okay, so what it means is that there's usually a range. Despite what they say, there's usually a range, okay? And there usually is some flexibility there, despite what they say. And what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and start you as low to the bottom as possible, okay? Remember, can of baked beans. Where would you buy it? Would you buy it for $5 or for $8? Two different stores. Same can of baked beans. You'd probably get it for $5. If you can get it for $5, that's what you want to pay, right? You don't want to pay $8 when you know that they're selling it around the corner for $5, right? Maybe they're selling it for $3 out of the back of a truck in the alley around the next corner. You never know, right? But maybe there's strings attached. Right? So that's what's going on. Now, it's not always flexible, okay? Because there's different companies, there's different situations. One situation is where you have a lot of employees and they're all at the same pay grade and they're all making, say, $10 an hour. And if they offer you that job, you're going to be one of 200 people at this organization doing that job, okay? And the other 200 people are all making $10 an hour. If they offer that to you, they say, congratulations, here's the offer. You're going to be the 201st employee here doing this role, and we pay $10 an hour. And you turn around and say, no, I'm going to need $15 an hour. They'll say no. Even if they really, really love you, they'll say no. Because the implications are that if I pay you $15 an hour, but I got 200 people working alongside you that are all making $10 an hour doing the same thing you're doing, if that ever gets out, these 200 employees, your 200 coworkers, they're either going to want to go out on strike or they'll quit or they'll mutiny when they find out about this because it won't be perceived as fair. You're working next to them doing the same job and you're making more money. That won't fly. So if I pay you $15 an hour, I have to pay them $15 an hour. And that's just not possible for me. I just don't have that much money, right? So sorry, no dice. It's $10 or nothing, right? And if you've said, I want 15, you're signaling that, oh, I'm not satisfied with 10. I want 15. To me, 15 is reasonable, not 10. So they may rescind the offer, right? That's one of those risks we talked about when you negotiate. Okay? So sometimes they may not be flexible on the pay. Most of the time they will be, to a degree, but sometimes they may not be. How can you tell? Well, one dead giveaway is if they have a lot of labor cost. They have a lot of employees for the amount of money they're making. In some industries, I've had the privilege of working in some industries where it was the opposite. You know, like anyone who works in like resources, you bring in like millions of dollars with only like 5 people, you know. In a year, you make like $20 million. You've only got a department of 5 people, right? Because you're dealing with big contracts and vast quantities of things and stuff, right? So in that case, if one employee says, no, I want $15 an hour, they say, sure, done. Right? They're not willing to risk disruption or lose a good employee over just chump change, right? But the opposite would be something like working in fast food where, you know, a McDonald's or something has 30 employees, they all make the same and they all make minimum wage, and then they offer you the job and you say, no, sorry, I'm going to need $50 an hour. They say, sorry, you can't do it, right? Okay. I see, where did I leave off here? David is back, says, how promotion plays a role in salary negotiation. How does promotion play a role in salary negotiation? What do you mean? Can we ask about how, promotion, like you get a promotion. How can we ask about how promotion in the company is going to work? You see, here's the problem. If you're asking them, you're saying, like, what are the opportunities here, right? Two immediate issues. Number one, you're signaling that you're not satisfied working in this role. You're saying, like, I want to make manager as soon as possible. What that's signaling is that, you feel that you're a manager, you should be at that level, and that this role is beneath you, right? That's a big red flag for them. You're signaling you're not going to be satisfied in this role. That's not usually the type of person they want to hire. They want to hire someone that's going to be super grateful and happy to be in this role, right? Okay. The second thing is that it's well known, and not a lot of employers will admit this, but it's well known that job interviews are very ineffective at finding the truly good people. And if you want to really know if someone is good, you have to do that sort of probation period. You have to hire them and see. Because this process is very flawed, right? It's almost completely ineffective. This has been shown with data, in studies that people at universities, like people with PhDs in business, they've been studying this problem, like this stuff for years and years, and they've shown this, right? That's a whole other topic, okay? But so my point is that they are aware that, let's say they offer you the job, they still really don't know if you're going to work out. You're their best guess of all the people they've talked to, but they really don't know if you're going to turn out to be an awesome employee or you're going to turn out to be a dud, right? So they don't know if you're even any good at this point. You haven't proven yourself, but yet you're asking about promotion already, right? So it's like, we don't even know if you can, like, hack this job, let alone, are you suitable for advancing to the next level up, right? So there's a couple of immediate issues with asking this type of thing, and like being serious and, like, bringing this up in a way that you call attention to it in a job interview. I wouldn't, right? The default attitude should be, I would be happy to get this job. It's work that I would enjoy doing. It's tailored to my abilities, and it's what I also find interesting. I like this type of work. I like working for this kind of organization. Whether it's a big company, small company, whatever industry it's in, this is where I want to be, right? That should be your attitude. Don't signal anything that suggests that, you're not 100% satisfied in this role if they were to give it to you. Okay? There will be plenty of time to explore that after you get the job. Get the job first, then cross that second bridge about getting promoted in that job once you're there. Okay? If it turns out that, there are no opportunities for promotion and that's a big deal for you, that's a showstopper, then you can resume your job search, but at least you're doing it from a better position. Okay? So anyway, that concludes the sort of topic discussion on salary negotiation for today.